Imagine being on a high school swim team, training your ass off for years, and through blood, sweat, and tears, you made your way to a state tournament, and when you finally step towards the pool, you take a look and see Michael Phelps in a wig on the other team. It'd be a little unfair, wouldn't it? Well, women athletes all over are experiencing something similar at the moment. Recently, controversy has been stirred over transgender athletes competing in school sports and even major sports organizations. And due to the physical advantages biological males have over females, the way I propose to end this dilemma would be to bar male to female transgender individuals from competing with women, unless they began hormone therapy before the age of 12. Having read multiple journal articles such as The Transgender Athlete Debate and The Limits of Inclusion in Sports by Martin Fitzhuber in Outside Magazine, and studies reported in the Duke Law article comparing athletic performances, the best elite women to boys and men, I believe I've become quite knowledgeable in the matter of transgender athletes. Also, for the sake of brevity, I'm going to be referring to male to female transgender people, meaning people who were born male but then transition to female, as MTF transgenders. Now, today I will first explain the problem with MTF transgender individuals competing with biological females in sports. Secondly, I'll discuss a plan to resolve the issue, which involves barring most MTF transgenders from competing in women's sports. And thirdly, I will help the audience visualize how my plan is more beneficial than the current policy. Let me first discuss why the current policy that allows MTF transgenders to compete in women's sports is unfair. Some sports organizations allowing transgender individuals to compete in women's sports creates an unfair situation for men. And many schools and major sports organizations allow transgender athletes to compete with the gender of their choice. According to a document published in November 2021 by the International Olympics Committee, the official Olympic Committee themselves stated that they would allow anyone to participate in the event of their choice regardless of their biological sex. What this means, essentially, is that the Olympics, the gold standard of sporting events, would allow biological men to compete with women in their sporting events. The NCAA has also permitted transgender athletes to compete since 2010, and even most public schools districts allow transgender students to participate in middle school and high school sports. The reason this is a problem is because MTF transgender people are biological men, and males are simply born with many physical differences that give them an advantage over women in sports. According to the National Library of Medicine, there are a list of physical differences that males have over females, which include males having an average higher muscle mass to body weight ratio, men having larger hearts, they have longer and stronger bones, they also have larger lungs, and men also have less body fat than women, just to name a few. And all of those differences offer mechanical advantages in physical sports. It's a common sight to see documented instances of men outperforming women in the same sporting event. According to a study published by Duke Law, female sprinting records are consistently 10% slower than males, and on average, women exhibit 2/3 the strength of men. They even found that the top female track and field athletes were being outperformed by boys under the age of 18 in the same events. Another issue that has risen because of this is confusion in the locker room. It is now commonplace for MTF trans students to change in the same locker room as girls, and because these individuals are biological men with male genitalia, it can cause discomfort for many of the surrounding girls. Now that I've discussed why it is unjust to let transgender athletes compete with women, let me discuss my second main point, which is my proposed plan that I believe would accommodate the most needs. Enacting a law banning sports organizations from allowing male to female transgender athletes to compete in women's sports unless they underwent hormone therapy before the age of 12. The reason the age of 12 was chosen as the cutoff is simple. Most development in males happens during puberty. At the age of 11, puberty begins to have effects on the body, but doesn't cause muscles to grow larger until 12 to 13 years of age, making that the cutoff for when a permitted transgender should have begun testosterone-blocking hormones. Otherwise, irreversible chemical changes would have already been made to the male's body, which would still give them an edge over females in sports. We would then move the later transitioning transgender athletes to the event of their biological sex. As most transgender individuals do not transition until later in life, usually after undergoing puberty, MTF athletes will already have a physical advantage over women. Even with estrogen blockers, they have been producing testosterone long enough to increase muscle size so that they will be able to fairly compete with men still. Also, in addition to the policy, would be a ban on biological males changing in girls' locker rooms, while also providing accommodations to the same trans students. The best way to accommodate trans students or athletes being simply to have a non-gendered area that would be exclusively used by them. And if schools or sports organizations operating within the country don't adhere to the rules and conditions of this policy, then the punishment for this would be that they would be forced to stop all sporting event operations for 2 years. The 2-year sentence was chosen because the immense financial and reputation loss would act as a very strong deterrent. I have so far covered why it is unfair for MTF transgenders to compete in women's sports, and secondly, a viable policy that would eliminate that unfairness. In my third point, I will try to help the audience visualize how that plan would be more effective than the current one. The current policy has caused outrage from female athletes and parents, created an unfair environment in women's sports, and has made many girls uncomfortable in their locker rooms across the country. My proposed policy would end all of that. This would mostly improve the fairness for women. There have been instances such as in 2022 when a trans woman won an NCAA swimming competition where the second, third, and fourth placing women went off on their own to create a true podium of the first, second, and third place winners. And with the implementation of my policy, an issue like the one just described would never happen again. It also creates a safer environment for women overall. This policy would make sure that girls' locker rooms stay a safe place. And seeing as there are relatively few transgender adolescents, then making accommodations can easily be done. Only 1.5% of people aged 13 to 17 identify as trans. Just because they're rare doesn't make this issue non-existent. I mean, for example, at my previous high school, there was multiple incidents of an over 6 foot tall transgender girl getting into 4 fights with girls in the locker rooms. And the student faced no consequences until a video of him beating up on a girl half his size went viral on social media. And you can look this up too. Type in transgender fight MLK High School. It made headlines. And the policy I propose would ensure that an incident like that is an impossibility. So in conclusion, I have explained why it is unfair for transgender athletes to compete in women's sporting events, and I have also given a solution to this issue and how it would ultimately benefit the most amount of people. While currently most major sports organizations allow transgender to participate freely, my proposed plan would make the landscape fairer to women while still accommodating some trans individuals in the process. The best way to support this plan is to go out and protest in front of schools and school districts, or simply to spread your opinion by word of mouth. Social media reaches a long way. Competitive sporting events are meant to be enjoyed by all, but when some have an unfair advantage on others, then rules should be put in place to fix that. Thank you.